Hi, everyone. Welcome to Solution Heroes, the show where we dive deep with the leaders who are shaping the future of solution engineering and solution consulting. I'm Chris Mabry, VP of Solutions here at Reprise. I'm here to have real conversations with solution leaders who are solving the toughest challenges in our profession today. Our guest is definitely one of them. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Rachel Lowe. She's the head of Solution Engineering Americas at Shopify. And that's not all she does. She has a fun organization. Besides leading the core solution engineering teams, she's also leads a global full stack dev team and specialists. And we're going to dive into that today during the conversation. So, Rachel, thank you so much for joining me.
I'm so honored to be here. Very kind words. Thanks, Chris.
I'm excited to learn from you. I will be taking notes alongside everyone else. I like to start these conversations with a bit of a hot take. Don't hold back. What trends and go-to-market or solutions are you most excited about that others have been sleeping on a bit? Where should pre-sales leaders be investing their attention today?
I love a spicy start, and I'm not afraid to bring the hot sauce, I suppose,
Yeah.
say. But without a doubt, it's individual compensation. And I know that this one is a spicy one because recently we've had a couple really wonderful leadership roundtables with other SC leaders. And I might stand alone on this one, as a couple of my peers have reflected back to me. But I think that, many of us as leaders have been SEs before, majority of us probably. We've been working with AEs. We know the amount of work that goes in on both sides, not just the AE and the SE, but also the SDR, the CSM. It's always a full account team approach. But I think that when you look at all of these, there's only two people in those four roles that have individual targets and I would say like individual paths to acceleration, which is the SDR and the AE. But when you're looking at also what the SE does in terms of getting that, candidly, in our org, SDRs also have a total revenue target as well. But in getting the SDR and the AE to hit their attainment, the SE plays a significant role in that. And I think, at least in our organization and many of the SDRs and AEs that I've worked with before, personally, like when I was an IC, is they fully appreciate and recognize that the SE does so much work that is unique to both of their roles. And the deal wouldn't have closed without the SC. And of course, it wouldn't have closed without the AE or the SDR either. But how come the SC is the only one that doesn't have an individual compensation for majority of organizations, I would say, in our industry? And I think what's really important to call out here is that, in order to feel like you are part of that team, that you're recognized in the same way for your craft, your work, your very deep solutioning, what you did to be able to get that deal across the finish line, like I think it should be something that we should all be actively talking about. I have a lot of challenges from SE leaders who've said, oh, well, that's not the role or the profile of the SE that I hire. And my question is, why not? Like, we are in an organization that is focused on revenue. We also want to make sure that we're compensating our teams fairly for the work, the very hard work that they're doing. Why not give them a number and a path to potential overachievement where they feel not just in terms of like their own merit and their own credit, but they also see that in terms of compensation. And I think compensation is the most critical way that we can really reward our teams, and setting an individual target does that.
That's awesome. If
Right.
you're watching or listening to this, what I ask you to do is if you either believe this or you think that this is way out of bounds, or you're
Way out
building
of
a
bounds.
team, yeah, especially that. But if you're building a team around this, because I've heard this too, I've heard, these roles.
Yeah.
We would love to hear from you. Reach out to Rachel and myself and like share what it is you're doing to hit this goal. Um, you lead a huge team, Rachel, and you've been in the solutions game for a while. When you think about solution engineering and how it fits into a company's org chart, because we live in the gray, right? And
Yeah.
there's so many areas where we can expand or mold ourselves into. What's your starting point? Do you look at like company size, motion, product complexities? How do you
Yeah.
assess these things?
So I actually think whether it's size, go-to-market motion, or product complexity, all of those are variables. But I would say there's two core things that I would say are from like a first principle standpoint. Like this is the core of what will determine where an SE should be placed in the org, and also in terms of like how you want to think about that SE profile at that moment. It is going to be the maturity of your go-to-market organization. And very interestingly, I do not think that that is directly correlated to company size. I think it is at a certain point, right? Once you get to like late stage series, or I would say like anything beyond that, like then it really starts being very comparable. And so I've worked at companies where there are 1,000 people. I've worked at companies where there are 30,000 people. Currently, Shopify is hovering a little bit over 10,000 people. And it was actually roughly the same size when I started about 4 years ago. But I would say that we had an evolving go-to-market motion at that point. And so when I first started at Shopify, the SE role was actually really small. It was something that we were still determining. I think we were still determining our revenue like motion overall. We were still determining like how and who do we target. We were still evolving out of a very, very strong and very successful PLG motion, because Shopify's product is wonderful. If you haven't had the chance to play with it, or even just like build your own store, or decide to start up that side gig that you've always wanted to, I'd strongly encourage any of the listeners to do that. It's actually inspired me and my husband to be able to do the same thing. Um,
Oh, cool.
yeah, it's a fun way to, I think, just tap into like your creative and business juices and combine it. Anyone can really start their own business, and Shopify really makes entrepreneurship possible. Like that is one thing that I really admired about the company even before. But going back to the question of just like where the SE org is, Shopify was predominantly focused on the entrepreneur for the vast majority of our foundation and business, extremely strong PLG. And so in the last 4 years, we've really started to mature that go-to-market motion. And in doing so, we've also really, I would say, like made our product market fit a clearer part of how we're going to go after these certain markets. And so 3 years ago, we really started to go after the enterprise. We even launched products, actually, previously called commerce components, now just part of our enterprise plan, that really better fit, I would say, like the legacy retailer, or our more complex and much larger merchants, whether they're a digital native or they're like a long-standing brand that we've heard of for decades. And so those two factors, the maturity of the go-to-market motion and then that evolving product market fit, I think really determine that profile and role of the solutions engineer. And so, many of us have been in organizations where the SE was maybe more like a technical partner or a demo monkey, or much more focused on just like solving the technical needs or even just simply troubleshooting. Where now we're being a lot more proactive in our motion. Like we're trying to proactively consult with our customers and actually try and help them look around corners. There's a lot that's changing in our market right now, as I'm sure we're all reading in the news.
Right.
And we want to be advisors. And so in order to do that, we have to be a lot more proactive in terms of not just thinking about do they want to go on Shopify or not, but also actually thinking a year in advance for our customers, what's going to make them most successful on Shopify so that their business, if it's 100 million online business right now, what can I do to make sure that they're actually exceeding 100 million business while on our platform? And that's really, I would say, like what some leaders might call post-sales solutioning. But I think actually with where you are in your go-to-market motion, the maturity of that, the SC has to start thinking about that just from the beginning.
Yeah, and it's like focusing on making your customer successful,
Yeah, exactly.
right? Like having a North Star, not just in getting a technical win, but it's how do you make them successful as a business, not just using Shopify, right?
Because we want to retain them. And
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that, I was just talking to one of our RevOps leader about this, like you really want the SE as well as the solutions architect, but like they're really like the architect of the house that you're building. And you want that house to be standing for decades later, hopefully maybe even longer.
Yeah.
Recently, I've been looking at some homes that were built in like the early 1900s. Incredible that they have lasted this long. And I
Yeah.
think same thing, like I want our SEs and SAs to be thinking about their solutions in the same manner.
That's so cool. I love the I've also owned homes that were like in the 1850s
Okay, you're way
built.
beyond me, Chris. I've been
Well, East Coast, it's easy to find them. It's not like here in
there.
California, when we were in California, like a home from the 70s feels old.
Yes.
And now I have to ask, is that 1970s or 1870s?
Yeah.
But
Long
yeah,
standing.
they're definitely built different. And
Yeah.
it's an evolution of the role, making sure your customer is successful.
Yeah.
It brings a totally different skill.
And I think some of that is also just like an evolution of how SaaS, PaaS, like most of the tech industry is actually thinking about pricing right now. Like I
Oh,
think
right.
quite a bit. You and I were talking about like I know Reprise is on a user license model, but I think that that's also something that like you're thinking about evolving and changing more towards a consumption model or a usage model, where that's something that like Shopify has actually started to divulge into. We have both a monthly contract as well as like a long-term consumption model, and
Okay.
that really requires your entire go-to-market team to be thinking and solutioning that way. And I think it's a wave that's going to increase. We want our customers to be successful, as we also get successful. I don't want to go back to my customers where I don't feel like we've solutioned that properly fits like their potential growth long term.
I mean, it's 100% where we're focused. Like
Yeah,
my entire solutions design is to ensure the customer is successful,
exactly.
not just on Reprise, but successful as a business. Like,
Yes,
are they hitting the targets? How can we help our champions actually accomplish like their personal and business goals?
yes,
That's a really different framework for a proof of concept or a
yes.
multi-year relationship and partnership you build.
Absolutely. And I mean, Shopify has been about a year-long user of Reprise, and have to give a shout out to your SC, Catherine Mosley. I don't know if that happens often
Thanks.
on your podcast, but she's still working with us a year later, and she's still bringing back reminders of, what direction have we seen, what evolution has she seen, just being an observer of Shopify's growth and how the SE world has like really, I would say, evolved even more in terms of like meeting what our platform needs. We've shipped a couple of new product areas that have been really pivotal for our growth, and making sure that that is also part of the way that she's thinking for us is definitely, I would say, part of your team's methodology.
I appreciate that. And I couldn't agree more. Catherine's amazing.
We'll take her
Um,
someday. I'm just kidding.
yeah, I know. Be careful. You can't have her. Since we're on that though, you've got a lot of plates that you're spinning at the same time. What's the most interesting problem you're wrestling with right now?
Oh man, I think it is, you know, it's hard to say AI without being cliche these days, but
Yeah, sure.
like, like it's like don't say buzzwords, but I mean this is an evolving aspect of our technology. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. And I think when I think about it, it's really about the intersection of where are we going to go, looking around that corner, not just in terms of like using AI in your day to day from basic tasks or simple tasks, right? Like I'm really challenging my team to think about leveraging AI in like multi-step functions and being thoughtful about like actually testing out different models and not just using the most recent model, but thinking through like, okay, based off of what you're doing, are you researching? Are you coding? What are you building? And what aid do you need with that? And based off of that aid that you're defining, like think through the different models. They are created differently. They're also evaluated differently. They're generating also like very different responses. I think we need to think about visibility and transparency as well as when it comes into how we work with AI, especially when it comes to customer solutioning. And so I would say like it's really that intersection. I've had a number of SCs actually recently ask me if they think that AI may change our go-to-market roles, which candidly, I think it will. I don't think it's going to necessarily take away roles, but I think what it will do is really increase the bar, and really up-level the bar of what the expectation is for what you can do in just 8 hours of a workday, and how that is going to actually increase like your execution and output.
Yeah, that's well said. I really love that take on like how it will increase the bar. Um,
Yeah,
because it is true when we do a lot of coding, we do a lot of content, we do a lot
I
of
do
work.
too.
And the bar is at a level now of, okay, how long did that take and
Yeah,
why, right? Because it
yeah,
doesn't need to anymore. And
yeah,
also there's a different set of expectations that I have as somebody who's in solution leadership myself, which is like,
yeah,
how often are you meeting people in real life? Or how often, what are we going to do with this? Right. And how do we undercut all the AI outbound stuff and actually make real relationships and actually care and build something that's meaningful for people, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
like, I think that's like a part of this evolution that nobody speaks about, but I think
it is.
it's changed the way that I think about solutions leadership in general.
It absolutely is. I think it's easy, to go back to what you said about like, how do you still deepen relationships? How do you move away from just um, being hands on keyboard, focusing on just being like attached to your computer, which
Yeah.
a lot of us are, candidly, every day or at least 5 times, 5 days a week. But like work is relational, selling is relational. Someone deciding to purchase your solution, what you're telling them is relational. That's a relational decision. And a
Yep.
relational decision is never going to be replaced by AI. I think that AI absolutely can like just fuel it. I think it can make it incredibly accurate, incredibly powerful, make everything faster. Like we're human, we have biases. We also like, we get tired, our brains will fail, we need sleep. Models don't. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like humans also create relationships, which models don't. Sometimes they can, like you can feel a lot of, I have a very special relationship, I would say, with like my co-pilot, but and it knows me, but it's not going to replace like my conversations with my friends or family. And so I think what actually I feel it is it's going to actually deepen those relationships. This might be also controversial out in the internet, but if you think about your smartphone, yes, on one hand, we're way too attached to our screens, and it's crazy to even have like a screen recording to tell you, Chris, you've been on your screen for 2 minutes,
Yeah, I know.
you know? But on the other hand, like I get a FaceTime with like my relatives in Hong Kong and in London. Could have never done that before my smartphone. Um,
Yeah.
I've stayed connected to friends like for decades now that you definitely couldn't do as well with mail. You could, arguably, if there's a will, there's a way, but it's not the same, I think, as being able to take them through your new home or introduce them to your new baby through FaceTime. And I do think it's all about human usage.
I think so too. Walk me through how you're actually tackling some of this because
Yeah.
I think it's easy to say, hey, my solutions team is using AI across workflows, across, challenges that they're facing.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious about your methodology of like actually like building a process around this so that there's like a method to the madness.
There really is. And I would say like I'm lucky in the way that like I have a multi-craft team. So like I don't just lead core solutions engineers. And so you mentioned
Right.
that I also lead a full stack team, which is actually how we've defined demo engineering. So we have a global demo engineering team in all of our regions, APAC, in Americas, and in EMEA. And that creates like an immediate like first line partner for your revenue teams. And so I think first things first, when you're thinking about your methodology, like you really want to recognize your different markets. You have your different markets, and then you want to think through like the different problems and nuances in each of them. And they are different for us. Like we have very differing levels of maturity across all of our international markets, as well as like what our product penetration is across all these different markets. And so if you're partnering them with a full stack dev team, you get the opportunity to allow this full stack dev team to partner with your solutions engineer, talk to the customer, and figure out what exactly and where is the customer in their own evolution, whether it is on Shopify as a platform or their experience with AI. Shopify was also one of the first platforms to actually co-build with not just OpenAI, but also Anthropic. And it's a core part of our platform. And it's something that I think our customers really appreciate because then they can actually leverage AI just to make their business more successful. And they don't
Wow.
have to really think through the nuances of like, which model should I be using? What should my evaluation criteria be? And I think that that's been really, really powerful. And so now you equip them with this amazing product already built on some of, I would say, the most cutting edge models there are. And then with a really phenomenal dev team that actually most of my demo engineers either used to be developers for our customers or for our agencies. They have that experience of being in that role. And then they analyze like what do each of these markets need. And so we have actually started having these like constant evaluations where we're building out different use cases for different revenue portions of the team. So we actually first started with SDRs. Now we're moving more into the AE SE partner portion of the sales cycle. And it's been really fun because we've actually been building with our peers. So we've been doing this weekly sprint with the SE team over at OpenAI. And I think that adds a whole level of increasing the bar, as we've been talking about before. I love to know what other people are doing. I think that's like the most fascinating thing about this role. Everyone does pre-sales and solutions a little bit differently based off of maturity and product. And so getting to meet with the OpenAI SE team every week has been really fun as they've been advising us and sharing their own build as well. They're building something a little bit similar to what we're thinking internally as well. It's always good to have industry benchmarks.
Oh, I totally agree. And I mean, I'm having run Pre-Sales Collective and now doing a lot of, I
You
would
have.
say, I I have such a passion for meeting with people in our profession outside
Yeah,
of my work because,
you.
well, I experienced it myself before I even got into that, I started leaning on peers and other parts of solutions leaders of other companies and saying,
Yeah.
how did you design your career architecture? How did you design your comp plans? How did you design questions I needed to answers? And it was like a light bulb went off. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's a couple things here. One, maybe I'm not as eh, maybe I'm not as far behind as I thought I was.
That
Okay.
is so true.
That's the unexpected thing here is when you talk to other people and you go, oh, you're having the same problem. I guess the grass
Yeah.
isn't always as greener on the other side. We're
Yeah.
actually dealing with the same challenge.
One thing
There's so much to that.
yeah. I think, Chris, you are such an ultimate like connector, community builder. And I think one thing that I don't know if anyone said is your superpower, but you're very good at like instant connection with someone. And even me, I think I felt that even though we hadn't known each other for very long. And I think that's something that we forget in our profession. Like sometimes it is so easy to be siloed because we are still an overlay role in comparison to sales, but we
Right.
all have such similar challenges.
Right. Well, thank you for the compliment. And I think you're right. I think there's a lot of people who underestimate their abilities to go out
Yeah.
and the importance of it, the importance of making friends or genuine
Yeah,
connections with people.
I agree.
Um, is AI changing the way you hire? Because I just went through this in my position, and I started to
Yeah.
look at hiring for solutions roles a little differently.
You know, like I hate to say that it is only because I think it unnecessarily fuels this perspective that like AI is going to take our jobs, which is not true. Like I fundamentally stand behind that. Like I do not think that AI is coming for the SC role, or for many of these relational roles, because again, like AI cannot replace that like relational decision that like it's an emotive decision to decide to invest in something like from a product perspective, right? And to make that decision for your company, that's a relational decision. But I think the reason that it is changing how we hire and how we think about not just hiring, but also I would say like coaching and growing the team, is because like Shopify is such an early adopter. And so I
Right.
think our CEO's memo definitely made some waves a couple weeks ago. Actually, I think it's been about 2 months ago. So it was an AI memo that got leaked that our CEO wrote. And it was just very much focused on how like this is like built into everything that you do, and that we need to be evaluating like if you are not doing that, like why are you not doing that? Why are you not evolving as like technology is evolving? And um, AI fundamentally like I think improves the way that we work, improves our quality, improves our craft bar. It improves what we can bring into for our customers from a solutioning standpoint, from a consultation standpoint. And so I think like in my interview cycles, it's a really core question, but it's also like a really core, I would say, like theme. And so that kind of goes between we have like a technical stage of our interview that feeds into like a feedback loop that then culminates in like your final round for your panel. Not unique in like
Okay.
I would say like the SE world. But what I would say is like a little bit more unique is like we really expect to see your leverage of AI. Funny enough, I was actually talking to some of my friends at other AI companies, and they do the opposite. They actually ask them to do research. You can use AI, but your written deliverable, you shouldn't use AI. And I think it's funny because it really goes back to what I was saying. Like, it's so dependent on your organization, like what your company
Wow.
does. And so for us, like, yes, we are. I would say like an AI um, influenced and built company. But I don't think like we're not an LLM company, like we're not building models.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see like people's different approach and how AI is actually feeding into their interview cycle.
Absolutely. I love to see because I just went through this process and I found somebody who was just incredible who used it to like essentially solve a problem using one type of code
Cool.
that should have been solved with another, but they just weren't sure about the other side. So they actually basically nailed the technical interview, but
Wow.
did it in like a hyper creative way.
Yeah,
So when we actually looked under the hood, we're like, wait a minute, what is this? Oh wow, this is really unique and creative.
that's so
And
cool.
it was one of those moments where you're like, okay, this person is hustling. Like they are hungry
Yeah,
for this,
you're,
you know,
you're thinking creatively.
thinking creatively. And it was almost that type of that type of hunger is what I look for in people.
Right.
I really want to see that level of interest.
Spot on.
Um,
Great.
wow, so cool. Let's talk about scaling influence.
Yeah.
Um, you now manage like this whole dev team that's enabling the rest of go to market is really impressive to me.
Yeah. And
But we're often like in SE world, I think often we're looking at we have the excellence, but people it's really hard to scale that outside of just the
yeah.
SE silo.
Yeah,
Um,
and I don't think we've solved it.
yeah, right.
I would
Um,
say, yeah, go ahead.
I think like in terms of what you've accomplished, or in terms of like spreading the expertise around the org, like what's working for you?
I would say the number one thing that is like pivotal to SE excellence is actually like kind of what you were saying before in the candidate that thought super creatively is you need to master your craft. Like I think that without an extremely high impact, high performant team, like my question would be like, why would you influence the org and why would you scale that without like an extremely strong foundation? Otherwise like that foundation would break. And so I think like one, you need to have a very, very clear level of excellence that is defined well for your team, well for any candidate joining your team, and also defined for any partners that you work with. So that could be sales, that could be product, that could be marketing. It could be like even external partners as well. Like I really want to get my team to the place where if I'm working with a lot of our core, we work with a lot of different Shopify agencies and partners, like they understand what expertise the SC is going to bring. But then they'll also share feedback, like if they don't see that, like I know this is the bar for what a Shopify solutions engineer, solutions architect brings to the table. And if they don't see that, they feel comfortable sharing that because we want to have that continual iteration and innovation. Like I think if you are not iterating, and I wish I had a whiteboard, if you aren't iterating, you're trying to go up, right? But no one goes like straight up.
Right.
Kind of try something. They're probably gonna fail. Like even for the candidate that you're talking about, whoever it is, maybe they had a couple missteps. Most of us do if you're gonna try something new. You're gonna fail, you're gonna kind of go down. But because you learned, your next one is gonna be higher, right? You'll have raised the bar a little bit higher. And so when I think about how to best scale it, it's like creating mini brand ambassadors across the entire team where they're thinking about any problem in front of them. And so if they're working with marketing, and marketing's like, oh my goodness, like we just don't know how to build this content. We really want to build this campaign. And the SE, actually one of my SEs did this. He's like, oh, actually, I know how to do that. And I can connect the dots for you from like what I know our product can do, what the technical strengths are, into like the value campaign you're trying to build and intersect those two. And that to me is scale. Like it is
That's awesome.
really finding the different problems across not just sales and SC, but in any of the intersections where we kind of think of ourselves as like channels into those different organizations. And then you scale that expertise. And the next time that marketer is like, you know what? That time I worked with Chris, actually his name was Chris. This is not just using your
Let's
name.
go, Chris.
I know maybe you'll meet him in the future. Oh, Chris built me this one pager that really like emphasized the power of Shopify payments, and that now she is enabled with that.
That's awesome. You mentioned excellence. First of all, I think I think we can help marketing a ton. And I have this whole thing around how we could build marketing councils and actually drive the message and the
Yeah.
story for the business because A,
Yeah.
your marketers are hungry for it. Your PMMs are hungry for it. They want that boots on the ground experience.
Yeah.
So I am
Yeah.
super passionate about solutions and marketing being best friends.
I
Um,
completely agree.
I love that. And I just came off a marketing offsite and I was like, yes, we need to be in the room. The second piece is something a thread I want to pull on is the excellence.
Mm,
So mastering the craft, the clear level of excellence.
yeah.
Um, are you passionate about excellence in roles and in general, just the concept of excellence?
Yeah. I mean, I think I shared too much with you before we started this podcast. But yeah, it's actually something I'm very passionate about in my personal life as well. And so one of the things that, I think is really critical is feedback loops. Like you need just like constant feedback loops. And I think we can all benefit that from that professionally and personally. Like
Yeah,
I think there's a lot my husband would probably tell me in our next like quote unquote. We have these like dinner times where we just like share how we think things are going. And so at Shopify, we actually instigated a version of that we call the OODA loop. It came from the military. I think a colonel came up with it, but it's basically hitting the fact that like a lot of military is deployed in like rapidly changing situations, very unknown environments, and you need to have like a lot of speed and agility to quickly adapt. And then you need to figure out like if the way that you've adapted is actually helping and moving the team forward in this manner, military in the military terms. But I think professionally also we want to think about that like in the same manner. Okay, I chose this way to adapt to this problem. Is it correct? And is it
yeah,
that,
right,
like same
right.
iterative cycle? Like, am I actually turning downwards or am I
Yeah,
adapting and improving up? And am I bringing people with me? One thing we don't talk about enough, I think, is like we have really phenomenal performers, like strong performers are not just strong performers in their silos. They are strong performers because they bring everyone up around them. Like they aggregate, they like compel the whole team to also think of that problem in a similar manner or respond to another problem in that manner. And I think that that's what mastering craft is. It's like not letting anyone master it solo by themselves, but together collaboratively with a very strong feedback loop, and doing so even if like you're scared. I think sometimes we can feel uncomfortable, I think later on in our professions.
yeah, sure.
I have for sure. um, and being able to encourage yourself out of that fear, meet that fear, and a lot of times I think it's with the people that you're around. If you have a really strong team, you probably feel a lot more compelled to try something new, test out something new, be okay with failing fast. Very common theme here at Shopify, but I think that's what
Yeah.
enables us to move quickly.
I think the OODA loop and there are, I think there are probably a lot of military examples on
There
we can
are.
all bring into our own SaaS companies and probably get better.
Yeah.
Um, and the feedback loop, I think, beyond being like a fly on the wall when these dinners happen and you guys are giving each other feedback, I think you're right about like in the personal world, we also do need to understand like how are
Yeah.
we doing? You know, leadership to me is like that kind, like clarity is kindness.
Clarity is
Clarity is
kindness.
kindness, right?
Yeah.
And to your point on somebody who's bringing others with them, it is like that is the definition of leadership. It's like that force multiplier, right? Are you a 10x multiplier? And that is one of the absolute things I look for in people. And that's the thing that's inspiring to me. I want to be around those people. I want to work with those people. I want those people in my life, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, I think just driving excellence in general is inspiring.
Yeah, completely agree. Um, and I think sometimes like we should also acknowledge that top performers might have a tough season. Like something could happen personally. And I think sometimes we are so quick to be like, man, Chris, he was so good last quarter. What happened this quarter?
Yes.
But we need to look at that like more holistically. Like maybe there is something personally happening in Chris's life, or in Rachel's life. And what can we do as a team to surround this person? I think teamwork is a really pivotal part of like high performant teams. Like it's not a high performing individual. Like what is really going to move a business, a segment, a team forward is everyone together.
Yeah. And I think if you're on a team with leaders, people who multiply, people who are curious,
Right.
people will, back to your point on making your customer successful, it's the same thing with management. Management's different than leadership, but
Yeah.
management is about making your people successful and investing in those people. And when you
With
have the right
yeah.
process and you have the right leaders around you,
Yeah.
it becomes yeah, it does become a force multiplier for your whole organization and for their
Yeah.
lives outside of work too.
Oh, yeah. Like, I- you know, at the end of the day, when I'm hiring an IC versus I'm hiring a leader at Shopify, we have like a higher ratio. It's usually around 8 to 1 for my teams. That leader can make is a multiplier of 8 at at lowest. Like that is
Yeah.
their lowest multiplier, right? But at their highest could even be 16 or 40 or 50, depending on like which sales segments that they're ratioed to. And that's what I think is like all the responsibility of people management. Like it is, you can be a people manager without being a leader, unfortunately. But I think that where you really make a difference is where you are both like a people leader that's inspiring, but also like a leader in thought and action that is that force multiplier.
I love it. People on your team are lucky, and I know some of them, and I will ping them and say, "Hey, talk to Rachel. It's so cool you're on her team."
Oh, I appreciate. I hope you guys have fun next week.
Yeah, yeah, I think we'll have a good time. Let's get a little practical on
Yes.
the application of some of this because um, it is always inspiring to talk about what we can do in solutions and how we can influence the whole company and how we can identify leaders and actually build up our worlds around us.
Yeah.
Um, it's tough to get into like step by step, and especially for that first step, because some
Yeah.
people are in orgs, they may have managed a team of solutions, or
Yeah.
maybe they actually got in the solutions at an org and they've been there 7 years, and it's
Yeah.
like, and I don't know what other people do. This is just how we've been doing it.
Yeah. It is so true.
Yeah.
Um,
So like I'm just looking for like what's the first step, like or what's one step that you can do that's gonna start evolving that culture.
Yeah. And so, if anyone has not been listening to this point, let's just be very clear about what that North Star is. And so, what Chris and I like are so passionate about is making your team a force multiplier, like making the SE the inflection point, this pivotal part that like isn't just solely focused on sales, closing that deal, but also focused on creating an organization that is deepening like your product market fit that is also like pushing your customers forward long term and really influencing the direction, I would say, of your revenue organization. I think SEs play such a pivotal role in that, or can play a pivotal role in that. And so, if you're wondering how to do that, this sounds so basic, but truly, like the first step is talk to everyone. And I mean literally everyone. If I were to move into this role again, brand new, like starting afresh, I would have skip levels with every single person in my organization. And then I would go and have skip levels with every single partner organization that I have. You don't have to do it one on one, but you can do skip levels at a group setting. So I think sometimes, like we as leaders, especially SE leaders, like we might forget about, like, well, what does that AE have to say? We shouldn't. Like, we should really try and best understand the front lines, not just from the points of view of your own team, but also the points of view of AEs, of marketing. Like Chris and I really
Yeah.
love the collaboration with marketing. Like, what do marketers think? Like, what do they see? Like when they're building their campaigns, when they're building their messaging, like what do they hear? And I love working with our marketing team here at Shopify, and I think there's such incredible thought leaders too in that org. We should talk to them. We should better understand what that market looks like. And then you should also talk to your customers. I think we sometimes forget, like, don't just join the call just to try and close the deal or try to listen, but what does the customer think? Do retros. I think retros are so powerful, whether they decide to move forward with your company or not. Like, I want to know why you didn't choose Shopify. Be super honest with me. I'm just here to learn. Like, Was it something we said? Was it something we did? Did we not position something? Was it our product? Like what gap, really talk to everyone to get that full 360 view. And no one is not important. Like I think sometimes we so focus on leaders as leaders, but I actually think front lines is where you'll hear what's really going on so you can better address the core of the problem.
So right on. If you talk to 15 CEOs today,
Yeah.
likely tell you that they need more of that. If this
Yeah.
is like, I think this is the current macroeconomics of our world, which is executives are hungry today for all of that information, and they want to hire people who are
Yeah.
not afraid to do that and to get out on the front lines. Um, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
such a champion of this. I drop everything for opportunities to meet up with people.
Yeah.
Obviously, I do a lot of industry events, but I do this with customers. I do it with people who didn't end up buying. I do it with
Yes.
people who are building really interesting tools adjacent. So to
Yeah.
your point about your OpenAI conversations, it's so cool to talk to another company that's building something.
It is.
Um,
Yeah.
and I have regular conversations with organizations where I'm like, why did you decide to build that? And
Yeah.
just add a lot of curiosity to it.
Yeah. I completely agree. It's going into the conversation like open-minded, to be honest. I
Yeah.
actually wasn't sure OpenAI would build with us on a weekly. I actually was surprised. I remember telling the SE leader, who actually also, to be super candid, is a good friend of mine. I was like, Jenny, you do not need to join these. I am just like trying to get some guidance and feedback and like also understand what's coming. Like, what do we have access to that maybe we don't know or we could build off of? And so generous, I think, because they really value our partnership together. And so it's been really powerful to work directly and seeing our teams just troubleshoot together. Something very gratifying about that, like just seeing SCs from completely different companies and different areas. It has been really cool.
That's so special. Um, one last question, a few rapid fires, and then we'll land this plane. We'll close it out. Okay. Uh,
Okay.
I want you to fill in the blank on this statement.
Yes.
I get most fired up about SEs who dot dot dot.
Our SEs in all aspects of life. I think that's the hunger. They're just like solution hungry. They like love to solve problems, internal or external. It's like really easy to spot. It's like someone who's just like will randomly say in an interview, "Oh yeah, I built that tree house." You're like, "Wait, you what type of tree house? A bird house? A kid's tree house? Like
Yeah.
what did you build? Tell me about that." One of my favorite SE managers here at Shopify, he has like this goal to um, there's like this Disney movie. I don't know if this is what he modeled it after, but he basically wants to make everything in his house smart. And so he's like even created a smart mirror that he didn't buy. He built himself actually. Um,
Yeah.
like he's just trying to connect everything so that he when he wakes up in the morning and he goes to his mirror, he can also like turn on his coffee machine and figure out like it is fascinating like how much Nick has been trying to connect everything. Um, and he's like built a user manual if you would like to do it yourself.
I was just going to say, I want a YouTube series and I want a manual on this.
Nick could go on for a while for sure.
And most of us can. Yeah, if you look at my life outside of work, it's like, oh yeah, I'm solving problems. I'm restoring
Yeah,
old homes. I'm
yeah,
fixing bikes.
yeah.
It's like that. Yeah, there's this like, how do things work kind of mindset.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's different for everyone. For me, like I really
yeah.
like tactical building. So like tree houses, furniture, very fascinating to me. Like I find that very interesting. It's just different. Everyone sort of has like something else that they can like lean to.
Well, we're going to step right into rapid fire
Okay,
questions.
yeah. That wasn't
I have
rapid.
three of them, and then we'll round it up and tell people how to get a hold of you. So this is just one sentence top of mind. What is the biggest time waster you see in most pre-sales orgs?
Building decks.
Love that. What's the worst SE career advice somebody has ever given you?
I'm only pausing because there's been a couple bad ones. Um, but it was like stop asking questions.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah.
That's real bad. I can see where that comes from, but that's really bad. Any final thoughts you want to leave the folks with?
Um, I think that one thing that we kind of touched on, but I really would love for us to like continue a dialogue on with other SE leaders is if you're listening to this and you want to think about how to create the SE craft to be more multidimensional. I think that that's the next stage of the SE craft. Like, I think that there is such a focus on just like, oh, just like the demoing solutioning portion, but there's so many more multifacets that I'm starting to see as like, again, candidly, like both, I would say the SaaS pass, like the tech world is evolving, and with AI being a big accelerator to that, I would love to start brainstorming on like how multifaceted SEs can be.
All right. Multidimensional solutions is going to be the title of your book. And thank you for joining me, Rachel. This has been incredible. I could talk to you a long time. Before we wrap, if people want to connect with you or follow your work, what's the best place to find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, RKLO, really easy tagline, or just like Rachel Lowe Shopify, pretty easy.
Cool. Awesome. For everyone listening, my biggest takeaway from the conversation is this: do not put yourself in a box. Explore, test, create, find great people to build things with, connect
Yeah.
with Rachel, follow her, figure out ways to get in the room with other people like her. It's exactly the kind of strategic thinking that's elevating our profession. Thank you so much for your time. If this conversation sparked something for you, I'd love to hear about it. So I love feedback. It's hard to do these things without knowing how it lands. So connect with me on LinkedIn as well. Don't forget to share this episode with other SE leaders who need to hear Rachel's insights. Until next time, keep solving, keep growing, keep connecting with humans in the process. Thank you so much for joining us.